So I was playing a mod pack with some friends that had the Astra mod, and I had come to the conclusion that it's sort of missing some stuff. You can chuck through it pretty quickly, and the thing about it is I've played a few mod packs where progression has been limited through certain milestones, and in Gratadim, New Horizons for example, a lot of ores are gate kept through different planets. Obviously I'm not intending to play Gratadim, it's a little too much, but I sort of thought I'd do an experiment, which is how hard actually is it to make a mod pack that's not just a kitchen sink pack, a bunch of mods chucked in together, because that way you end up with 4 different kinds of tin, and that's not a joke. I did in fact play a mod pack that had more than 4 types of tin. It was incredibly annoying. So what does it actually look like? So I put together a sort of alpha version of some mods that I quite like, and I've got down here 4 that I was thinking, well 3 and vanilla, and specifically what is the progression and how do I think I should link them together. So to start off with, this is just vanilla, right? Wood, stone, iron, diamond, obsidian, nether, blaze, and kill a dragon. Game done. Netherite obviously is a fun additional thing, but you don't even really need it. But in particular, I've got the tools here because this is kind of the progression of the game. And obviously, if you're speedrunning, you pick up obsidian down here because you find it in chests and yada yada. But really, this is kind of where the linking opportunities to another mod comes in. So this is Mekanism. Mekanism has 1 ore. It's got osmium ore. It's mineable with a stone, but in order to make the first machine here, you need redstone. So in fact, it is gated to iron. Once you have that, you can make steel. Now, steel is the material that you make most things with in Mekanism. Obviously, osmium is the mod's material. Every mod adds something like that, and that is definitely osmium. But steel is kind of the material that you make the most. And steel also unlocks the jetpack. Now that's an important thing because we're going to be talking about mobility later. And then these are the alloy tiers. Infused, reinforced, atomic, and this is redstone, diamond, and obsidian. Once you get to diamond, you get refined obsidian, which is sort of the osmium's 2nd tier material. The armor with refined obsidian in many packs is not modified and is better than diamond and better than netherite actually. So that's usually the one you can go for before going for some super high powered one. Atomic alloy unlocks these 2 tools. So you've got the atomic disassembler and the digital miner. Now this I typically rush for when I'm playing the mod, because you put it down, you can put a chunk loading card in it, and you come back to 100 blocks of whatever ore you want. But the atomic disassembler is a little bit more complicated because we come back to tinkers in a minute, and this essentially invalidates most of the tool progression for tinkers. So if we're going to put tinkers in this pack, we need to be careful about when we get this one versus the other materials, or remove its craft in recipe entirely. Could go for that one, could do either one, depends. Though I feel like encouraging a behaviour is better than forcing a behaviour. So after this level in Mekanism, we have the fission reactor, radioactive processing, and you get polonium, which lets you make the top tier armour. Now there's a couple of points about this one. Obviously we're going to be talking about Astra, so you need spacesuit tech, and you can put the space tech units into this because it's a modular system. Now that's a great idea. You can also put the jetpack on there as well. But the problem is that this essentially invalidates all the damage that comes in. It uses power instead. So again, have to be careful about when this gets unlocked. Obviously, we're going to be gating maybe the alloys, but we can also change the crafting recipe for the polonium or the crafting recipe for this one directly. It doesn't really matter. So for an Astra, again, starting at the same tier with stone, you make the compressor and the generator, you make the blast furnace, you make, again, a second kind of steel. This lets you make the workbench and then a rocket, and as you get to the moon requires a spacesuit, but the moon and each planet here have their own ores, and obviously the part of the things I want to do with this one is encourage people to stay on the planets rather than just build a base on Earth and then go, Earth, moon, and then back to Earth, and then back to Mars and back. Because I sort of want to stay on the planets. I feel like that's kind of what the mod should be. Though, again, want to encourage to stay on the moon rather than be forced to. So the moon has iron and these ice shards which turn up later. But the special ore is Desh, and this is the planet's material, which you need to craft the tier 2, but you also get solar panels and gravity normalizers and oxygen distributors and water pumps. And the water pump is used for the air, splits it into oxygen, yada yada. Funnily enough, Mekanism actually has that feature as well, but because Mekanism uses a gas resource type, I don't know if I actually have the ability to change that properly. We will find out possibly later. You also get fluid pipes and you get cables, power cables as well. Mekanism have power cables, they're also gated to steel, so it doesn't really matter. Once you have Desh, you craft the tier 2 and you get to Mars. Mars has Ostrom, which has the Energizer, which is Ad Astra's own charging. But it also has this cryo freezer, which the ice shards are used for to make a better fuel. You don't even really have to do because it's quite easy to get. You need 3 buckets of regular oil or just 1 of the cryo fuel. But there's so much oil around it, it doesn't really make any difference as to why you should do that. Then we have the tier 3 that you get to Venus. There is also Mercury, but there's essentially no reason to go to Mercury because calorite is the tier material, but you don't need to go to Mercury for that, it's not there at all. These are the only ores there. And then tier 4, you get to Glacio. Now these, you need to go to Mercury and Venus, you need netherite because it's hot, duh. So this does actually have netherite in the crafting recipe. And then this is the jet suit, which lets you sort of fly around. So again, we're talking about travel systems here. But you get lots of ores there. So, but again, it's like the end tier planet, so there's not really any point being there. So the last one is Tinkers. I just love this mod. I think it's really good. So this is roughly the progression here. So you can get grout with nothing and you smelt it to make. And then with the melter, you need the melter to make the smelting controller. This is one of the changes when the mod was updated to 1.16 that a lot of people didn't like, because you just used to craft this smelting controller with, I think it was a block of something. You instead have to like cast it like this. And you need the melter to do that, and then you just end up with a melter sat around. There's not really a lot of reason to have one after that. But then you have alloying, so these green ones here are alloys. Again, we have a third kind of steel. We have uranium, which is added by compatibility, TC constructs, I think. And then we have a bunch of different alloys. But the alloys let you craft anvils, which let you craft the second set of tools, the hammers, etc. The hammer is the big one that people want. Then when you get to the nether, you get the nether grout, which gives you the foundry. The foundry has slightly different recipes. So when you smelt ore, for example, you can get secondary ores. But there's also the alloyer, which lets you alloy alloys more specifically, because you can alloy in there, but you can't really choose which ones if you have more than one option. And then this one lets you also smelt nether tier ores. So you can make netherite in these, but also these other ones. Not to mention, there's also the blaze fuel, which burns hotter, which is required for at least this one and probably a few of the other ones. So this is just sort of generally how the mods progressions are all linked together. There's a few additional ones though I want to add. So firstly, chipped. I am not particularly a builder, but I will probably be doing generated structures primarily because I want to see if I can. Also, crafting table, builder's wand. I have played mod packs without a building wand. It is extremely annoying. I've also played mod packs without sophisticated backpacks, and it is also even more incredibly annoying. You can look further into the whole Minecraft inventory crisis type thing. And then there's the trowel, which lets you place random blocks based on the blocks in your hotbar. I think will just be a good addition to this kind of suite of stuff. So the next one is storage. Storage is a difficult one. I quite like the sophisticated storage, but you need, so you see osmium in here, cobalt in here, and if I sneak, you can see at the top, there's both of them. But there's no way to access the inventory through there. You need a kind of storage reader. Obviously this is applied in logistics, but this structure, the meteorite structure, you can move it to off Earth, which is what I will probably do. Create Astra does that, it puts it on the moon. But obviously, if we're going to need a storage terminal to read the block, we're going to need... There's no point having this one. Well, the chests are good, but there's no point having this particular system as a storage system. So the question is, do I do a different storage mod for this as something else to interact with it, or do I just suck it up and make people wait till the moon for this? Because if I get one of these, I can push this further back down the progression. So I don't know, I haven't decided yet. The next thing is power. So realistically, there's only two at the moment. There's Mechanism's whole suite here, and I've also added iron furnaces so you can put the generators in. I'm not convinced this is enough. I think there should be another one. But the problem, of course, is that when you... mods that have their own power generation tend to come with the rest of the mods. And there's only about 50-60 mods in the pack, and I don't want to put too many more on, because it's just more... You know, this is complicated enough with 3. I think it would be too much to add a second one. And power is primarily a power generation, but it is extremely overpowered. And again, maybe for later game stuff, but I don't know, I haven't decided yet. So the other thing is transport. Like I was mentioning with the jetpacks and the jet suit, there's essentially two kinds of gameplay I'm thinking about here. So the first is people on a server. The idea that people make their bases a certain distance apart, and I want it to be easy to move from base to base, to collaborate, to share resources, all that kind of stuff. But also, I don't want people to be able to cheese you having to use the rockets to get from planet to planet. When I've played this, I've usually rushed the Mekanism teleporter, and then I've just placed the teleporter block, and I've never actually flown back to Earth. I just placed the teleporter and one of these solar panels, and with a chunk loader add-on, and that's been it. Now, luckily, Waystones actually has a function for this, but I can actually set it so that dimensional cost requires XP. The last thing is cheese. I really enjoy being able to cheese issues with mods. So, for example, I talked about the steel in Tinkers, but if you actually look at the recipe for the steel, there's only one way to make it, which is melting down chainmail our secondary as a secondary thing, which means is gated to foundry, at which point you're sort of in the higher tier alloys anyway. There's not really any point. this is primarily a compatibility thing. But let me show you what happened on one of my friend's servers. So you see how I mentioned that you can smelt the chainmail into iron and steel? Well, we have a modpack Epic Nights that adds. Oh no, it's Minecon adds this recipe. But you may notice that we've got 2 ingots and 2 2/3 ingots. But when we smelt this down, we get 5 1/3, which of course leads to this system. Now, we're casting iron into blocks. It's being pulled in here, crafted from blocks to ingots to nuggets. We're then crafting this down, and then I have this, so it just exports 3 into the inventory constantly. And in addition to that, we're getting steel. So I left this running about 5 minutes, and we're already up 6 blocks of iron and 6 blocks of steel. I set this up on my friend's server, chunk loaded it, went to bed, came back the next morning, 6,000 iron ingots, and the entire system was jammed. And actually had run out all the fuel as well. So this is the kind of cheese that I like, because you need to do more than one mod, right? And I think cheese that involves 3 or 4 mods, at that point you've basically earned the free resource or whatever it is. So that's sort of how I feel about cheese. I think it's reasonable if you can earn it. And in fact, a great example of this, we actually have 2 different kinds of cheese, because why not? So basically, this is a test to see how much I can actually modify Minecraft, because I've done a little bit of programming, yada yada, never really done any Minecraft stuff. So I basically want to see what can I fiddle with. Now I've been playing with KubeJS. Now you see this controller. Now the stock recipe for this that comes with the game is 4 copper, but I have actually already changed this to dash. This was mostly just to see if I can actually modify a modded recipe, and some of them I've been able to do. So as you can see here, I've reoriented the tier 1 rocket recipe to crafting a dash engine instead. This was again just to see if I could modify NASA workbench recipes, as obviously I can, which is good. I've also added this blast furnace recipe. This is mostly to see if I can add a block and a recipe. Obviously you can see it over here. This is while I was getting the texturing right. It has no UI. It's just, it's not a block end, it's basically like stone. Again, this was mostly to see if I actually could. These are all the Astra textures I sort of kit bashed in to make it. The other recipes I've added, so typically this is the only way to make dash plates. I have actually added this recipe, which is a little bit difficult because these could be several different things. This was tags and stuff, mostly just to see if I could. And I've also added this to the crushing recipe, mostly to see if I could modify certain mechanism recipes, which I can. So the next step is structures, really. Mostly to see if you can find tutorials and stuff. It's apparently relatively easy, but I don't know, we'll see. But there is also one additional thing, which is I want to see if I can modify world terrain. Apparently this is easy, relatively. Let me show you what I mean. So here I am on the moon. Now pay special attention to the shape of this bit here. Right, so we've got 1 right to the corner, then 2, 1 and 1. And look what happens if I do this. Now it's a little bit hidden behind the ice spikes here, but 1, 2, and then 1, and then 1 there. Here on Mercury, 1, 2, 1, and 1. Basically the problem is that Astra uses the same macro terrain generation for all of the planets. And the kind of problem is that you don't really see anything interesting. So I would like to be able to see if I can change, maybe not the whole world generation, but maybe change the seed, the macro seed for each planet. I have no idea if this is even possible. Presumably it was because it exists there. That's Gratadim. I call it that because I was originally going to call it per aspera, as in ad astra per aspera, but that already exists. So it roughly translates us to the stars step by step. And I thought the step by step would make sense considering we're supposed to be gating it by planet. So that's sort of the meta idea there. There may never be another video. I may never actually go anywhere further than this. But again, it would be interesting to see if it does see the progression. So yeah, that's episode 0, I suppose.